Recording started.
Okay, this is the SIG Automation meeting for Wednesday, February 15th, 2023. I'll just say a few quick things, and I think, Wim, you had some things on the agenda. Yesterday we met, and we talked about trying to push towards the execution plan. We spent the whole hour yesterday talking about that. And Bala last night put some issues out there, so we're starting to work on that. Tomorrow there's a TSC call. I'm gonna talk to them about sort of our plan for a plan, which is a little vague right now, but I'll work on it today. But that's kind of the state of that. I just wanted to give an update on the status. I think that from an execution point of view, we need to keep iterating on making the plan more and more concrete. It's not at all concrete yet. But part of that is getting the CRDs figured out, and part of that is getting through these use cases. So I think unless people have other thoughts, I think that's probably the right approach right now, is to just get back to that, and these planning things we'll do offline unless people have specific inputs.
I personally believe at the moment, to get to our plan, I think the CRDs are probably the most urgent as far as I can tell. But that's my personal view. I don't know how others feel.
Being committed or responsible for the SMF CRD, I agree. It's the starting point, how you model it.
Because I see, so the way I look at it is the following: is like, we have to, in my view, we have to start at the top, right? So, but we have to get to the SMF level eventually. I will have to get there, but probably the first thing to do is we have to look at it from the top. And so far I received very few. But I think, or at least that's my view, is if we understand the top, then probably we can have people already start looking at these potential implementations and or reference implementation of them, and then we can go along, right? So because from the moment you have that whole thing, we go through the hydration process, and we can also then start document the architecture. Or let's say the first thing that you need probably is a topology controller, and basically discuss what it needs to do based on the CRD input, right? And then once you have that, you can go for the next, and so on and so forth, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there was one talk about information model versus data model. So now, I agree, we should start with CRDs, but I just wanted to understand, are we going to say this is both our data model and information model?
So the discussion, we had a SIG chairs meeting yesterday just to sync, and what I agreed to, which I guess for coming from representing the SIG, was that we would provide that draft CRD model to SIG 1 for its review. I think we said early next week. And so that means I think those people who are particularly interested in that, which I know is Wim and Stephen and I think Tal, and should work offline to come to conclusions and agreement on that from the SIG. I'm interested in it too, but I have to defer to my telco teammates because it's really very domain specific. But I will take a look at it from the kind of Kubernetes API design principles standpoint. But Stephen and Tal and Wim and whoever else comes from more depth of knowledge in that world would do a better job than me. So I'm trying to have a light hand.
Okay, thank you. So our process is we will do CRDs here, then we'll pass it on to SIG1, then we'll iterate through that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that would be like early next week. We'd want to get that to them. They're not going to meet next week because it's a U.S. holiday. So, but we don't, we'd like them to review it offline. And then they may come back and say they want things different. That may not happen for release 1 because we just don't have the time. We may just go with what we do for release 1. But like,
Right.
yeah, Tal's had his hand up for a while now.
Yeah, I just want to say I agree in principle. In an ideal world, we should be designing the CRD right now. I'm worried that this is not going to help us, and I'll explain why. That sounds very depressing, but here's the fact. We still don't have the seed code from Google. It's coming very soon. But that seed code is designed around the CRDs that we've already shown. Adopting and changing the CRDs at this point could be great, but that means refactoring that seed code, including changing the architecture, right? Some of the proposals involve like changing the order of things entirely, introducing new controllers. I'm very, very worried about our ability to hit the May launch date for R1 in a reasonable way with this. I do want to redesign these CRDs. I just don't think this is the moment. I don't see us being able to actually do it in a satisfying way right now.
Yeah, you have a.
Yeah. Tell me if I'm wrong, but since I signed up to do the SMF CRD, I'm starting with what we have from the POC, and then trying to see where we need to extend, modify, whatever, to arrive at the next, the one, quote unquote, I think we need it. Is that the wrong approach? Should we just stick with the CRD we have and then for velocity's sake and then circle back and iterate? I'm asking, I'm not telling.
I'm happy to hear other opinions too.
So what was the end?
Jean-Marie.
Yeah, so if I may, and that's a question to Tal. If I'm hearing what you're saying, basically, it means that there is not much that can be done or that should be done to that seed code. Which means what can this group do for the first release?
Well, the seed code is really incomplete in terms of features, right? So there's a lot missing in terms of that. There are things that we did for the workshop that were just a proof of concept, but they don't actually go beyond that proof of concept. They're very broken. Yeah, the idea of actually changing the design and architecture, which is something I would love to do, I just don't think we have the time to do that. I mean, we can do both things at the same time, design the CRD and also work on R1. It's hard for me to, the devil's in the details, right? There might be certain tweaks that we could do that could work.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, and I'm not under the illusion that you can change the architecture and meet an early deadline. Okay, so depends what is our priority. But if the goal is really the early deadline, then what this means is that we need that seed code available before we can do the planning.
You're correct.
Okay. Otherwise, so we need to make that decision.
I guess I would say, sorry, I'm kind of jumping the line. I think we can put a placeholder in to say, we're going to evolve this. The seed code, we're not going to be able to just take as it is, right? I mean, that's just not, like, there's going to be evolution once it's released. And so maybe we just put just from a strictly like mechanical planning perspective, we just put a placeholder in of evolve it here.
Yeah, no, let's be clear, John. I don't think anyone thinks, and what I'm hearing from Tal is what is the seed code is not to be untouched for V2, for V3, etc. So that's really for the first release. But we need to agree what, as a group, we are concentrating on. If what we are concentrating on as a group is this first release, when what we need is the seed code and start from it.
So just to be clear, the design that Stephen showed up is the design of the seed code. So we don't have the code, but we do know its architecture, right? So again, we can, I think it makes sense to tweak the CRD in ways that can work with the architecture, but changes to the CRD that involve changes to the architecture, I think will be very hard. That's my point. It's about the details. I'm definitely not saying don't change the CRDs at all, but I'm saying there are things that we would be able to change and things that would be much harder to change. We can still do that design and say that, we'll do what we can in the changes, but for R1, but there might be things that would be delayed for R2. But other people have hands up. Please let's them speak.
It's your next sentence.
So the question or proposal is so I'm wondering how much the gap between the seed code that will come and the requirements and the use cases for release 1. So I know that, so we already started to list the gaps, but that was more like between what we already have. What is the difference if we take the seed code as a baseline? You have more insight on that. So will it be able to handle release 1 and all the use cases that we want to support there in its own, or how much work is needed to reach release 1? Okay, so I hope you understand the question.
Yeah,
I think
this is mostly for the Google guys who are familiar with the seed code.
So Tal and Stephen, I think the question is like, we were looking, Wim has the presentation that's gaps between workshop and R1, and do we have an equivalent gaps between seed code and R1?
Yes.
And then the question is, how much rebasing of workshop seed 1 on each other can we do to meet those gaps? And so do you guys have a sense of that?
Seed code to R1. So seed code, so first thing to do, seed code to the POC in terms of syncing up some of the infrastructure would have to happen. And then so that actually would be very close to the diagram that I put together. There are a bunch of other Nephew things, controllers that we have to build as a community. But then in terms of the diagram that I published, once we get the seed to be, well, I mean, more namely to break it down into the NF topology and so on one side, and then the hydration pieces are all going to be more like the POC sets, where the packet deployment controller, which is probably going to be package variants now, and then all the injectors, and then we basically have to kind of refactor the injectors anyway. So that's part of the work, regardless of whether or not seed or not. That would pretty much be very close to the R1 diagrams that I have. And again, the diagram itself is kind of blurry because you probably need a lot more would be a strong word, but a couple more injector or controllers, Nephew specific ones to go in to get into more of a can we satisfy all the infrastructure requirements when you push a single intent type thinking on R1. So there's still some work. I think what the seed would give you, it dialed back actually the some of the work we did ONE Summit a little bit, but then what it does give you is more stable code, if you will. They are tested, and then they are also there's also unit tests, and then we'll gradually port the integration tests from internally out, and then there's also an implementations of the feedback part, what we call deployment part. So those are the benefits that we hope can benefit the community.
I'm going to lower my hand because I was next in the line. So Istvan actually.
I'm first, I think. I was first.
I just joined, so I have no idea.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Whoever. See, for me, I think at the moment, why did I look at the CRD or changed it? Because I wanted to make it more uniform, such that that we can use. For me, if we spend the time right now, it will help us going forward. Because in my view, we can do release 1, and then if we have to iterate again in release 2 to the CRDs, we are not making a lot of progress to what we want to achieve, because I believe in release 2, we should focus on other, let's say, territories. Because if we start continue iterate on those CRDs, and the way that's behind, we are continuously doing the same thing. And that for me, we are, as a whole, we don't make progress. Second statement that I would make is that if I look to the CRD changes that we are doing, I am not so sure that I see you probably there will be changes at the top, but I think most of the work happens in the middle. And the piece in the middle, if we have to rechange that again, then or we have to refactor it, I believe that we have to do that work anyhow. So in my view, saying or being dependent on the seed code only and say that's it, I think as a community member, I would like to act differently and go to something that we believe is going to be something that we really want to move forward, and that we can not continue to iterate on the same thing, but basically make progress across the board. And that's how I look at it. And all depends, by the way, whether we can achieve that for release 1, how many people we get that will be involved in helping us to achieve that. But if you look what we achieved in 2 weeks in the proof of concept, and this is proof of concept code, if we have the right people in place, I believe in 3 months we can achieve a lot.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm really just trying to show to raise the challenge.
It's reality.
So for
reality.
Vim, so the CRD changes. You and I had like a 1.5 hours conversation on this. So I think it is true that we should split some of the pieces, like the networking setup and the attachment definitions out, and put that as a single intent and a single when you push the package. Some of the changes you made, however, are I don't want to say opinionated, but it's more like a shuffle fields that I guess even between John and me, we did that several times.
Yeah, I know. I see.
The information gets shuffled around a little bit. I mean, it's in net gain, it gains very little. It's just that, so now we have to make those changes. I have honestly not very strong opinions on where the thing's supposed to go. John and I actually wrote like a long essays internally about whether or not, hey, should class have capacity, or should class only reflect on which vendor it points to. SIG 1 hopefully would resolve that for us at some point. So I have very little opinions on this. It's just that the cost of going with that is we're going to seed. That's going to happen. And then we'll have to make some changes on. We'll have to make more changes on the seed rather than waiting for hopefully getting some SIG 1 response, which we've been waiting for like half a year already. But still, at some point, someone has to kind of step up and tell us, where do you want the information to be? Because at the end of the day, we have pretty much the same set of information when it goes to the controller. So semantically, there's no problem. It's just that syntactically, we suddenly get shuffle stuff around again. And I've done that once already internally to shove some stuff around. It's a little more work than I expected. I thought it would be nothing to it, but it's a little more work. So it kind of incurred that cost. That's basically the only thing that I would have problem with, if anything.
Yeah. So, but you're mainly referring to the split between what happens in the class and what happens in the NF template,
so that was
right?
the thing, right? So,
and by the way, I moved back and forth because initially it was not in the class and I moved it in the NF template. So I am also not very strongly opinionated about it. That's why I wanted to discuss and make a decision, right? So, so I just made a proposal and I went back and forth after the discussion with you. It was in the template with John, it was in the class. So I went also back and forth. So I'm also not having a strong opinion one way or another, but we have to make and that's why I said in some of these things, we have to make we have to put the stick into the ground and say, okay, that's what we do, and go from there. But
because there's already going to be a time when I take seed and make it at least sync up with the POC functionality wise, getting total ONE Summit, getting back to the ONE Summit functionality. That will take some time. Not a lot of time, hopefully, but some time. Let's say 2 to 3 weeks. And then if in the same time there's also CRD changes, it may actually take a little longer. I'm not sure per se, but then there may actually be a little longer. So that's the only concern. Otherwise, CRD is supposed to be a change by community.
I think based on, like, if in the chat Hussein brought up, like, these are not going to be stable APIs. Like I
Yeah,
don't think
no.
anyone can argue that these are stable. And the fact that Stephen has an opinion and I have an opinion and Wim has an opinion and probably other people have opinions and none of them are all that strong means we don't know what we're talking about. Like, and it's because we just don't know yet. And so SIG 1's going to give us a different opinion and hopefully we'll have more knowledge. So we should go in that sense with our proposal probably to match the minimal changes needed to the C code just as a practical decision, because we're going to change it anyway based on what SIG 1 decides is the right thing. That would be my just a kind of pragmatic solution for that.
No, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should start somewhere, and we know it's software. It's going to evolve. It's going to change. I mean, it's fine.
Yeah.
We start with the point that we're comfortable with, that we can deliver. It's absolutely fine with the knowledge that it's going to evolve. It's going to change. That's going to happen with any software.
Yeah, Fish, you're next, I think.
Okay. So I think one of the questions I was going to ask was already asked by Istvan. So good, we are thinking similar. And the next one I was going to say about was alpha, beta, and Hossein already mentioned that in the chat window. So that's also good. You know, we're talking about that. And I'll make the third one. The third one would be like the seed code that we're talking about. I mean, I can tell you this in the practice from my OpenStack days. Some of the PRs would actually take 6 weeks before they would get merged, or the features. That is because usually it took people, you know, you slowly soak it in when you look at PRs, right? You have to observe, you'll have questions, you'll have a lot of comments, and then there'll be answers, there'll be feedback given, and there'll be responses to that. Is it something similar that we can follow for the Google seed code so that we don't wait for it to be dumped? You know,
yeah,
example,
so we definitely want to have more approvers. So because we break it down to functionally repos, component repos. So each repo can have different committers. It's not just me and John.
Yeah.
And I think, Vish, the point is like right now, I think, and Stephen and Tal, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what's happening is like, oh, this piece of code is entangled with some internal stuff that we can't open source. So it's like unentangle that, and then we can present it to everybody. When it gets presented to everybody, one of the things we did in the POC was we dumped a bunch of code, but we dumped it in a POC repo. I don't know if we want to, like, how we want to do that with the C code, and I'll leave it. I mean, Tal and Stephen probably could say better, but like, we're going to put it in and it's going to evolve substantially from where it gets put in. Like it's not going to immediately be part of some release.
So I understand
it shouldn't take that long. I mean, our experience back at Neutron is when Neutron has its worst day ever, the worst period of time, where merging codes took a very long time. In here, it's a much smaller community. We have opinions, but then in a way we work together very well so far. So I don't think there's a lot of I wouldn't foresee a lot of issues in terms of like PR sitting around for like half a year and not merged.
The reason I say
not.
that is
Anyway.
not everybody might be familiar with Go code, for example, right?
True.
You know, even if you put in just like one file, for example, somebody is going to use this opportunity. Hey, okay, look at this. Let me actually go bring up my whatever editor or the IDE and start looking at it and starting to get up to speed. You know, you will have people coming up to speed. You want the community to come up to speed. That is what I was trying to say with this.
I would also say that the seed is not that big. It's not like ecom 8 million lines.
Okay, no, I understand that.
Right. So it's not that bad. And Go is, you know, smaller than say C++ to do the same thing. So it shouldn't be that.
It is just a way for people to be like able to come up to speed in terms of, hey, they're releasing one at a time, and you know, I'm able to like consume it. I'm able to understand it. I don't have to be the only guy thinking that I need to go through this 10 or 20 files, you know, if there is, you know, and then expect it to be approved in like 1 day or 2 days, right? Because it takes time for people to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, all community work this way. So some of the committers may be like kind of lazy out, but then when you ping us enough, they will definitely approve quickly or look at it very quickly.
Yeah. Okay. That's my point.
Ravi, I think you're next.
I don't know how the hand works. Isn't Neom next or is it Ravi next? It should go from left to right.
Not clear what order they're in.
It seems to go from left to right. I think, right? Neom may probably be next.
Yeah, I just want to. I just wanted to make a very small point. Is 3 months is nothing in. Flash. It's blink of an eye. So by the time we actually see the seed code, get familiar with this, we have to be kind of a bit realistic, maybe, about what we can do in R1, and if it's just for me, it would seem to be probably pretty minimal. I mean, okay, and then have ambitions for doing everything else. Is that really the reality of it? Do you think?
Yeah,
everything depends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Stephen. Yeah.
The seed pretty much does what the PLC does at best. Probably a little behind, even functionally. So we'll quickly catch that up. And then in terms of what is added on top of that, from PLC, and we talked about that, it's not going to be a lot.
Yeah, I don't
functionally. And
just isn't the time, So that's, I suppose it's just put in some scaffolding and foundation for later releases.
Yeah. And then we'll have confidence that anyone who wants to download it into a particular target platform with enough VCPUs and memory should run with no problem. I mean, the PLC is actually very close to that. But then
we probably do need some soak-in time as well for people to get familiar with ways of working and tool chains and build systems. And
the foundation is to make sure that any changes moving forward would go through some sort of test pipeline, so it wouldn't break stuff moving forward. So I think that's R1, as you said. R1.
That'll all take time too.
Yeah, if I can just chime in there, like just as an example of the kind of things, like in the POC, you create a resource and we spit out a bunch of packages. But if you go back and you delete that resource, we don't delete those things. We don't have a way to specify what to do, right? Like, whereas what we've been evolving in Porch with like package variant set, which we may, they're actually not quite, there's certain things they don't do that we still do in the POC, but there's other things they do like, oh, there's a deletion policy and adoption policy. So if there's already a package that matches those labels that's in there, do we adopt it or do we leave it? When we delete that, do we delete it or do we, so those are kind of like these kind of like dotting the I's and crossing the T's.
Well, that's POC to production stuff, isn't it? And I mean, look, you're not going to get 3 months is very short if you want to have stuff up to that quality. I mean, people, on the update, you can live maybe with create and delete for a while, and whatever.
Right.
But,
so we're trying to wrap up some of those things as well as put in proper testing, things like that we didn't do any of that in the POC. So that's why functionally it's not going to be that much more. We really do want to meet those use cases. And I agree with Wim that like, if we do this right, there's a lot we can do, but it's, like, anyway, I'll stop talking. There's lots of things.
Okay. I don't know, did I make any point really there?
I think it's Ravi next, I think, but I'm not sure.
Ravi seems to be next, probably.
Yeah, this is me, So, I'm driving, so if my connection might be not too good. I just was trying to reflect on what Tal commented. Like, I mean, with everything with R1 was like, okay, we have one summit, and then we were expected to get this inputs or from the SIG ARC1, but I don't see anything material there. So this becomes a logical starting point, and then Wim's kind of that deck on the gaps and so on. So I was just trying to understand when Tal said, okay, we want to redesign this. I mean, is it something like basically a significant material change? Because with what I see, even right now, the CRDs are pretty much kind of having it's kind of organically extending from what we did for one summit, because we don't have any strict requirements from SIG ARC yet. So what was that major redesigns? I mean, is it more from a software implementation perspective or basically even from architectural?
I don't think it's R1 anyway, right? The major refactoring of like architectural change. That's not part of R1.
I think that Tal maybe should speak to it, but I think I don't think he meant really major architectural. He was just saying he didn't want to make too many significant changes to the CRDs, and I think we'll settle that. And it sounds like we've kind of sort of at a very high level agreed. Let's be pragmatic about things that are that we don't have strong opinions about, and there's not like a really good reason to do. Let's leave it like how the seed code does it and try to evolve from there. So I'm not too concerned about that. I do want to comment about the SIG 1 requirements. So what I've my sort of statement to Kaushik and Sana yesterday was, hey, we're going to iterate on what we know right now. And then we'll present to you what we're going to do based upon what we know right now. And we'll go back and forth with some of those inputs that we really wanted, like roles and things like that. We're going to go with what we know right now. I think Wim's got them in the document. Like in R2 or R3 or R4, we'll learn more and we'll be able to build a more sophisticated model for more sophisticated roles, but we're not. I don't want to take dependencies. Just speaking as like SIG2 chair, official role, I'm not taking a dependency on outputs of SIG1 for us to achieve R1, right? Like I want us to state our assumptions and execute on those assumptions. If they don't like our assumptions, we can negotiate and discuss them. But like dependencies will make this impossible to meet these tight deadlines. So I think we have a couple hands. I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe I should just answer quickly because I was asked. Look, my pushback here comes because myself, Stephen, and Arvin are really working hard right now to get the seed code ready. And the more we're learning, the more we're delving in. It's complex. You know, it's Go code. It's not Python. There are a lot of tests too, right? So think any kind of refactoring or change that you do, you're going to have to be changing code across multiple repositories, including those tests. I'm worried, you know, everything people said here, it takes time to learn code. It takes time for people who are not familiar with Go to learn Go as well. I think there's going to be quite a bit of a buildup since we released the seed code until people really feel comfortable with it. And I'm just pessimistic about making significant changes by May. But we could, you know, it's, you know, if we're ambitious and we really try, we can put these things as nice to haves. But here's the problem too. Refactors are huge pull requests, right? They might cross. To do a refactor, you have to plan it across multiple repositories, kind of one at a time. It's a big change that changes a lot of files at once. Or if you're doing it piecemeal, it's complex stuff. I'm just worried if we'll be able to chew that much. That's it. But I hope we can. I hope we can.
Mm-hmm. And also one other question I had, like, I mean, the CRDs that I mean Wim has in the document, I mean, that's all kind of put in that Go format. Is that the official format that we are going to use, or because it's definitely not very intuitive to me because I'm also learning Go as we speak. So,
Ravi, do you like Open API? Because I can generate them easily, right? So it would be 2 minutes of work. But it's for me, it's Open API is a bit. It's that format better, but I use Go because that's the final code. So that's why I wrote them in Go because of that. But I can generate them in other formats if you want.
Yeah,
yeah, anything that, yeah, any implementation kind of independent way, I think should be fine. That
so, like,
I'm not. Yeah, so go ahead. Yeah,
just to context, right? Like, CRDs are an open API schema. You know, basically not that easy to read. I find that although the Go format is, you know, it's Go, so it's got its issues. Today, pretty much throughout the Kubernetes ecosystem, generally people define the source of truth as their Go structs, and then they generate the open API schemas from those. Mm-hmm. That's sort of the standard practice in the Kubernetes community, and we don't have a better way. We've talked about creating an IDL for a few years, but you know, that's a big task that nobody's willing to take on. So that's really the only structure that's the most concise structure we have today. So
for the first version of that CRD doc, I originated it. It has both the Open API YAML structure and the Go struct. So we can go back to that. That's okay.
The other thing is you can just list them as bullet points. I think I did that in one document. Like, here's the content without getting into all necessarily the details. But again, eventually it has to become something machine processable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the previous version of the document was more readable for me. I could easily understand the things. Is that just that the syntax is not very familiar sometimes. I mean, I do understand.
Ravi,
the
I'll
basics.
I'll add the open API. It's 2 minutes of work, so or maybe 5 minutes
Yeah,
of work.
sure.
So I'll add
Yeah,
that.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Is on next?
Yep, I think so. At least I'm claiming
Yes.
next.
Good.
Yes.
Several questions listening to this discussion. First one is May a firm deadline? You know where I'm going.
Yeah,
I guess
yes.
SIG3 should say that. Yes, we
Okay.
operate under that assumption. TSC has not actually proposed any firm dates, but then it's out in the public. I think that's the expectation.
let me tell you something else.
June would be the.
So,
Oh, sorry.
On,
Yeah.
I think the answer, the more interesting question is, what is the significance of that first release? We're calling it
Yeah.
R1,
Yep.
but is it going to be a 0.1? Is it going to be a beta release? I mean, at the end of the day, well, we get to decide what it is. The TSC gets to decide as well what to label it, but they'll base it on our feedback. If we're saying we consider this 0.0.0.0.1, then they're just going to have to go with it. But there has been a commitment from the TSC early on to make a release. This is already late, actually. It was supposed to be early this year.
Yep.
So, but the contents of the release and what the significance of that release is up to us.
Okay. So the follow-up question was, what is the content of R1? And you just sort of answered that. The next question I have is more specifically, we don't really have 3 months. We have 2. By the time the seed code drop is March, right? And then we
Yes.
have March and April, and then May is the deadline, either early or late, and testing and packaging and all that.
Well, for the actual engineering work, you're correct. But for the planning work that we need to do, I think we're doing it right now. I think John's document is a great starting point and starting to create issues. So you're right. In terms of actual engineering, it is less time. But in terms of planning, we are starting now.
And then my last question to the group, because of Ravi's comments, which now trigger my alarm, which is, I assume we were Go based and Kubernetes based and all that.
Mhm.
We're not changing from that, right? We're not switching to another language or another
No.
implementation.
No.
Controllers can be written in any language theoretically, but most of the tooling in the world is written in Go because of Kubernetes. Now there are tools that we can do if we need to build operators that help us bridge, but for now, R1.
Yeah, because
No,
when you said IDL, I was like, oh my God, no, I don't want to go through another core by IDL.
No, I was talking about in the Kubernetes community, we've talked about to define these APIs. If we had an IDL, there's some cool things we could do, but what we have is a sort of crude, poor person's IDL of embedding tags in Go structs and then generating stuff out of that.
Oh, okay.
My comment was more on how we kind of share those information models or the data models. So it was more from that perspective. I mean, not the language implementation. That could be cool for sure.
Because my concern is, there are enough tools in this tool set that we're using that if we start by jiggling that or adding, subtracting it, it's just more complication. That's all.
Sure.
Yeah. It's Go. Don't worry.
Don't want to have to learn Rust or something else.
Vala, you're next, I think. Yes.
Cool, thank you. Thanks for very interesting discussions. One thing, and I think we were talking about the issue. I think we have 2 issue boards now, one with the SIG release and one with the R1, 2 project boards. I mean, obviously the R1, I think John has to take a look at it. Only after that probably will be solidified. Probably Stephen can take a look at the SIG release board as well, and see if it makes sense for the community. And on the seed code front, I wanted to say that if as long as the code comes, when the code comes, as long as it does have unit tests and some docs with it, I think we should not spend too much time. in the review process and merge it, and then take it, take that code and then get the community educated on that one, so that we do not spend too many cycles there. So that is where my mind is at. So when the code comes, yeah, if we have unit test coverage and documentation, we should merge it as soon as possible, and then let the community can clone and get all of us can get educated. Obviously, we'll have a lot of questions, and I'm pretty sure our friends in Google is going to help us understand that. So I think those were main comments at this point of time. And on the doc, I think I like the suggestion of John made about the CRD. Probably, I think the Go types is good. The Open API is also good, or a simple table representation. I'm not asking Stephen to do anything, but probably it's something we can think of for the future, where we can just represent the CRD contents in a table. Like one is what is that?
A type, and then all the fields and what the explanation of what the fields are.
Exactly. Yeah. Name, type, and then description.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Actually, no, we should do that. Kubernetes has that anyway. So yeah, we should do that.
Yeah, we should do that as well. Sure.
But you can generate this, so there is generators, so it's easy. So you can even make them public. You just take a Go struct and generate it, and then you have a public document which describes all of it using Swagger and all of that stuff if you want.
Yeah. So I think those were some of my comments. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm next.
Is Vim next?
I think so.
Again?
Yes, yeah, I think so.
Again,
I'm next first. Okay. Steve, what I have as a question to the team, right? Can we? Because I think a lot of what we are discussing depends on how many people will contribute to code and what the experience level in coding is. So I would like to. How do we get info? So the people, maybe we should send an email. I don't know how we collect it, but which people on this call are willing to contribute to R1? And maybe we should not even say what piece or something like that, but let's say all people that are able to do code, and whether it's unit testing, let's first focus on the code, unit testing or real developing pieces of software and stuff like that are able to help us on that. So I would like to collect those amount of people, because I think what we have to do is use that as a pool and try to see what we can achieve with that type of resources.
Back in ONE Summit, we did a focus group thing. I don't know where it may still be too much time to do that. I'm not sure. That's maybe up to you folks.
So no, this is a good point. Like I think what we definitely will do that, Stephen. That's what we're iterating towards.
Maybe too early to do that.
Yeah. To a board, and Vala started putting it together, like you said, like where we can iterate and execute, and we'll have not daily scrums, but we'll have this meeting potentially, or the Tuesday meeting. One of the meetings will become more of a scrum, but I think Wim's point is we don't know our capacity. And what part of what I wanted to do, and we're not going to get there, like with the plan, was to try to understand our needs, and then go to the TSC and say, hey, you guys want R1 by this date, and we figured out we need 7 people. And so which of you here can commit how many resources to do that? So that was part of my goal. We're not going to get there by tomorrow. So the other approach is the bottoms up approach. Who's already here? How much time can you commit over the next 3 months? And that's the other half of that equation of what we already have. So I think that's a useful exercise to do. Because it's true, we don't know, right? We can talk all we want about what we want to deliver, but if we have no idea what the capacity is,
right.
It's not very.
Actually, can we do a quick raise of hand now to see who's willing and able to commit
or
to delivering?
Or maybe send an email or to the maybe I don't know how we do it. It probably is.
I prefer to use an email approach.
email or
Yeah,
Slack.
maybe
Maybe
a
I'll
Google
post it.
form like we did for other things, like that says
Or go for.
I can
So-
commit this much time, 1%, 100%, 150% of my time, and here's my skills, like just to get an
So-
idea of our capacity.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe a spreadsheet, Google spreadsheet, where we can say, have the columns,
Yeah.
code, unit test, build, things like that. And then each one of us can have our name and say what we are comfortable contributing in those particular columns and how much time.
Yeah, the form just puts that
Yeah.
all in
Yeah.
a spreadsheet. It's a way
Yes.
to collect that data. But
We
yeah.
can do that. Yeah.
So
We
okay.
prefer a form over the spreadsheet because I'll set it up and then we can add people into. Do we prefer a
Let's
spreadsheet
do a
or?
form, and the output of the form collection process is a spreadsheet that then we can use as a base to do whatever else we need to do. I don't
Yeah.
care if people prefer to
Yeah.
just add themselves to a spreadsheet. That's fine. I just think I think we'll get more responses if we give people a form to fill out than if we, of course, who knows.
Yeah, anything is fine. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Isti, I
This one
interrupted
has
you.
has
So
run away.
Isti,
Yeah.
Sorry.
Isti, are you back? Yeah, you were. I was.
Yes. Most of all I wanted to say was already said by Bala. In the meantime, I wanted to propose that, yes, if we talk about the details of structures, then it is either Open API or GoSuch, but it is much better if you want to explain it for the first time to somebody to use representative example YAML files. That's all I wanted to add as a minor comment, but basically what Bala proposed to have a document that describing the fields is something similar. So, okay, so again, already said.
Okay,
That's
no
all.
worry. Okay, I thought you had a different point, but sorry. Yeah. All right. So, do you want me to set up the form, John, or what? Because I think it's good information that we should get that ASAP, right? At least we know at least our capacity.
Yes. Okay. Yes, please do. Okay. So with our 10 minutes left, so can we summarize what the tasks are so far? I think there's comment/revise CRD document for the pragmatic decisions we discussed, as well as, I mean, other people need to comment, right? And then the make it more readable for folks with however we do that.
Let's fix the date on that too, because we are talking about sending that to SIG next week. So comment before Monday or something. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the action was on me, but I want to set up maybe an ad hoc meeting. I think who needs to be there for sure is Tal and Steven, I understand, but then I would like to have everyone else, so I can we do it tomorrow before or after the TSC, or does it work? Or
I am okay. Yeah, sure.
After the TSC?
Yeah, I'm good.
So I'll send up an invite, and anyone who can participate. So right. So I'll set up a Zoom meeting. I'll send it on the Slack, and then people can participate if they want.
Perfect.
And of course, we will present an outcome by next week or in our meeting. So we will, actually the document will be updated, but we can give maybe a short summary of what we concluded and why. Or we write it in the document. It's probably even better.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So so for tomorrow, I'll prepare an update for the TSC around getting a plan of plans. I'll review Bala's issues that he created, and then when you were going to create the form around getting a sense of capacity. Are there any other tasks that we need to?
John, there was one thing is I was on the issue list, right? I was trying to assign some of these things to myself, but I couldn't.
I need to expand the team. We are figuring out the permissions.
Okay.
So in the Kubernetes community, we've got special tooling around that so we can use prow to assign labels, and we've got better permissions model than what you get out of GitHub out of the box, but that's probably overkill. Like, it's a lot of work. Well, I don't know. I didn't set it up, but I think it's probably a lot of work to set up the tooling to do that. And SIG release has already a lot of stuff to do. So I'm just going to I created a team, R1 team, and I'll just give anybody in that team permissions on that, pretty broad permissions on that repo, and we will trust people. So as people volunteer on that form, we'll add people to that team. Right now it's just me and Bala because we were just experimenting with the permissions model, but we'll just start throwing people in there, and you should have that access to do everything. It's a little bit of a problem because you also have access to push to the repo, which none of us should do. Even if we have permission to do it, we should rely on Prow to do the merges, but we're not there yet anyway. So we may have.
Well, I was trying because I was looking
that we shouldn't have, but that's the best we can do for now.
Sure. I was just wondering how we got assigned, or what was the process to get assigned. So I looked at the issue list, I think this morning, and which is great, by the way, to have that as a tracker. But I can change the status, but I cannot change the assignee, I think.
I think we just need to put you in that team, and then it'll happen.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's I don't understand that they have, you know.
And then also for people to say, okay, I volunteer for this, so we probably need some people then to assign them to that thing if they are not having that permission.
Once somebody's in the team,
then it's fine, yeah. But let's say outside, so someone says, okay, I want to do this.
Right. So first of all, they have to be in the org to be able to be assigned to the issue at all. And then once they're in the org, in order to do the assignments themselves, then now if we set up Prow, and Aravind, I don't know if he's here, like if Prow is set up, you could actually say /assign and then the person's GitHub ID in a comment, and Prow will do the assignment. I haven't tried that to see if it works. We could try it. If I don't know if Prow's monitoring that repo right now, though. Probably not. So that would be that's some of the tooling we will have. Issue assignment, CCing people, which adds them like to the reviewer list, like some of those things.
I think for now, what we have set up is, sorry, John, just on that point, for now, what we have is PRs. For PRs, like it'll automatically assign based on who the reviewers and approvers are, but not for issues.
Can we add the plugins for like assignment /assign?
Yeah. I think we could. It's just a matter of, I mean, we're getting around to doing it. That's all. Yeah, we can do it.
Okay, and then you did that for which repos?
No, we were doing it for like it was a POC, right? Even for the Prow. Okay. So we did it for like some dummy repo, but if we don't even have repos yet, right? Like we need to first.
Well, these issues are in the nephew repo. So there's a nephew repo, which pretty much is just a README file and a glossary, or no, it's just a README file. But it's got issues. That's where we're putting the issues to track them in one place.
Okay. Yeah. We can sync offline. Yeah, we can do whatever. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay. Nope. Why don't we just get 3 minutes back before everybody.
Okay.
Amazing.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Everyone. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Yes.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Stop recording, I guess.